Padre at the other end of the snake. So I'd be a little bit lost without him up there.
Well, let's see. Now, shall we have now Phill introduce Harmoni?
Boom.
Harmoni is an awesome addition to our band. We before Harmoni, we had an all-male band, and it was good. But to bring the zeal and life that she brings to the stage and her powerhouse vocal and the ability to play bass, I mean, she comes from a star-studded lineup of bars and clubs and bands, and what she brings just kind of enlightens the stage. We've been, 5, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. Wow, time flies.
Time flies.
8 years playing bass.
And Wanabo said, "Holy cow!" Eight.
8 is great. But she really has enlightened the stage and really brought more of the production side of performance to it. She brings the technical ability to do her job, but also the smile and bright eyes that is Harmoni.
Thanks. Oh,
Hey,
wow.
look at that.
Can I give my side of that story? No, go ahead. I'll save it. I'll save it.
Oh, we'll cover all that in a minute. But just to finish this sort of loop here, I guess Harmoni should now introduce Robert.
Scoville.
That time I've got.
How much?
I have got to run.
And Robert, I feel like he's one of those guys that is just a legend, and anybody who knows anything about the touring industry or live sound knows who Robert Scovill is.
Please carry on.
No,
This
I
is
know.
good. This is
He
good.
put his wallet in my purse a minute ago, so I'm just going to keep handing compliments to him. But yeah, you joined our little road family 2 years ago, and
Still the new kid then,
he's
right?
still the new kid. I'm not the new kid anymore, but I mean, if you know who he is, his resume sort of speaks for itself, and we are very lucky to have him. And he was he was a part of Tom Petty's crew for 25 years. So he was Petty's guy for a really long time, and back in the day, worked one of my favorite bands, Def Leppard, back in the heyday of Def
Hair
Leppard.
day.
The hair day. I still want to hear all those stories, but
And
some
boy,
of
did
them.
he have hair.
Yeah.
Huh.
So he's maybe one of the best ever front of house engineers. So we're super lucky to have him. And yeah.
Kind. Very kind.
And for me, I'm absolutely thrilled. I've been wanting to do this particular subject on a panel for years now. And it's, if you know anything about people's touring schedules, getting any crew in the same room at the same time is just,
Unless it's the bar.
well, yeah, there's that, exactly. But this one has been a long time coming, and I really do love the idea of doing it with this particular bunch of people in particular, not only because of the fact that they have this rapport with each other, but also with the fact that each one of them is absolutely hilarious in their own right. So we might actually get through a question or two here by the time we're done with this panel. I don't know.
Also, we'd be remiss not to acknowledge and recognize our missing brother here today.
That's true. Do we have a photo of Opie's knee?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So we have another monitor engineer. We have two monitor engineers on the tour. Phil handles Kenny, and Brian Baxley, aka Opie, handles the band. Yes, Opie. So he interacts a lot with Harmoni and the rest of the band, obviously. But I had to have knee surgery right before the show here, so he wasn't able to make it today. So we will try to carry on in his absence. It's a tall order to fill because that is one big personality that would be sitting up here. So, Brian, we miss you, brother.
So let's just start with some kind of basic stuff here. Obviously, each of you is in a completely different position during the show. Obviously, you have communication with each other kind of down, and I would assume that by this point, a lot of it is just in a dirty look one direction or another, and things get done, right?
There's a
Oh,
911 channel.
Yeah, there is.
We dare
of
talk
course.
about that?
There is, of course, the communication aspect of it there too, but I'm guessing that a lot of it doesn't even really have to be said at this point. and that a lot of it can just be communicated. But the the big question here is for each of you. Um, I'd kind of like to know a little bit of the pain points, the stuff that you have to deal with from your particular vantage point. And I know that each of you has completely different priorities. And at the same time, everything that each of you does is interdependent of the other. Now, I'd actually like to start with Phil because there's one thing about monitors that is different than anything else in the show, which is that basically nobody really cares about your mix except those people on stage, right? I mean, you could be doing something that sounds like absolute crap to everyone else, but you're really just there to serve the talent on stage more than anything else. And that's a kind of a humble position in a way, I think.
Well, in Nashville, they like to call it the hot seat because it's usually the position that's first to get vacated when something goes awry. Either the tickets don't sell well, the crowd isn't in the mood to hear whatever song they're playing, or they've just been drinking all day. Sometimes it's what you do as a monitor engineer that helps take the pressure off the star, and that doesn't have hardly anything to do with sound. It's psychology, it's babysitting, it's talking to them and just comforting the situation and trying to make them feel good about the video wall is not working right now, but it's going to. And I haven't talked to the video department, so it's very difficult to know exactly what's going on. But since I see it wiggling, there's someone's climbing, so it's probably going to get fixed. And it's my best assumption, tell him what's going on. My job is really just to get them what they need to do their job. And as years of touring has proven throughout the years, when you do music, you have hearing loss, you have vocal problems, you have arthritis and things that grow in your joints when you play. And all of those things have to be kind of considered by the monitor engineer of what the problem is and how to cure the problem, and try to do that before the problem exists so that there's not something that they're thinking about, oh, did he fix that? No, I put it in my ears and I go sing. And that keeps the show a little safer and calmer and more collected.
For you, Robert,
You're going to go to me next?
I am doing
All right.
that for a very good reason, because what you're doing out in the house, nobody else knows on stage what's going on. Things could sound totally horrible up there.
And they often do.
Well, I have heard other people refer to it as just playing with a big stereo.
Well, honestly, I'm probably going to push back a little bit on what you're saying here.
Please do.
Because, over my long tenure doing this, I think some of the realizations that I came to, and this really started to come home to me when I was working with Petty. I look at this much more holistically, right? This entire thing that we do, these shows, concerts, and I really don't care what scale you're talking about. It is a system. And I mean it from the scientific version of a system. Everything is interconnected. Everything is interconnected. And the more detail that you can pay attention to, the better those connections become, right? So, music is a communication, right? It is a communication that takes place between musicians. And I think certainly at the large scale, we've kind of lost sight of that a little bit. As an industry, I mean, I've got enough gray hair to remember a time when we didn't even really have monitors. I remember mixing on some of the very first monitor consoles, And we've gone through a period of time now where whether we've done it wittingly or unwittingly, we've tried to compartmentalize these places, right? We've compartmentalized the stage and compartmentalized the front of house mix and all of these things. Even with ear monitors, now we can compartmentalize a single player, right? Music is communication between musicians, and they use their instruments to communicate. We cannot disrupt these pathways. The better we do them, the better the communication is going to be. So if Phil's having a terrible night up on stage with the singer, does it affect the front of house? Absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. If Harmoni's on stage playing with a really uninspiring sound, does it affect how things are going out there? Absolutely it does. It's just
Never
a matter of degrees, right? If I'm having a horrible night at the front of house and the monitor guy says, I can't make it sound good up here because he's just struggling up there, Do you think that affects their performance? Absolutely it does. So there's this circular nature to it where you have to get all the parts and pieces in place and hope for that best result. You know, you have to pay attention to all of it, all of it. So
Well, I would like to add to that because, as you say, it is a communication among musicians. But, and this is where your role is so important, it's also communication between those musicians and the audience. And you're,
100%.
yeah, you're working with that feedback too. And they're really, I mean, to your point, it is a system. And I think the interesting challenge here is when you're a part of that system, when you are, and in each of you in your roles is a cog in that machine, when you're inside that, it's, isn't that a challenge then to zoom out and really, you know, kind of, I mean, you've got to think about what's going on stage, what's going on in people's ears, all of that, and then, you know, what's going on with the reaction from the audience.
Yeah, I don't mean to step on you here, but I'll jump in there. You know, you have to be able to, as Phil kind of said, recognize those problems before they exist. You know, I'll give you just a broad example. The reason the monitor guys may be having problems on stage is because of the leakage of the PA system onto the stage. So is to solve the problem louder monitors? No, it's to solve the leakage. Yeah, of course it is. To solve the leakage problem, right? So, you know, you've got to recognize the problem and go fix it at the source. You know, that's, I mean, that's where all the skill and the experience comes in, is to be able to do that correctly, you know.
If I add something to that, it's also very important, especially as a monitor engineer, but I'm sure for the other positions, to make sure you're surrounded by competent and qualified people so that when there is a problem, you know it's being taken care of. You don't have to worry that I have to get involved. Unless it's, you know, leakage on stage from the PA or things like that I can control, and it is my responsibility. If the artist is having a problem, the band's having a problem, no one trusts it's being taken care of. If you see it's not, you can step in, but stay in your lane as best you can so that everybody can do their job.
And it's all communication. I mean, you and I talk after every show. I mean, how was it up there? How did you do? What was the PA like? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's just part of this debrief process that takes place after every single show. And you kind of put it in the blender, you come back the next day and try to do it better.
But you walk the stage before the show too and listen to the PA and make sure that you know
I
what.
spend as much
talking
time up on the stage listening to the PA as I do out front, easily. So, yeah, because I know how much it's going to impact what we're doing up there.
Well, you both said that the word that I think is intrinsic to all of this, and it actually, it rings especially well for Harmony, is trust, right? I mean, the fact that you all know each other as well as you do is certainly helpful. But, you know, there's a lot of people who go on stage with, you know, somebody brand new in crew all the time. And that trust that each of us is covering our particular zone. I mean, he's up there naked to the world, figuratively speaking, of course. But,
I mean, depends on the night.
hey, you know, we'll pay extra for that, you know. But,
So,
but you know, that if you're the performer up on stage, that's the ultimate trust because you really have to know that these guys and the rest of the team are giving you what you need, right?
we're at the mercy of all the crew around. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's interesting. Like by the time we get to the first show, so much work has gone into making sure that everybody's at a comfort level, you know, where we're doing band rehearsals and getting sounds, and then we're moving into full scale production rehearsals and you know, lights and camera and video and all the thing and performing the show. So by the time we hit the stage on the first, you know, at the first stadium, it's already so dialed in, but stuff can still occur, you know, whether it's like the leakage on stage, or this venue's different, or there's a, you know, a stadium with a roof on it, and tomorrow we're playing a stadium, you know, that's open air, or, you know, the subs are moving around for whatever reason, and then the band is like, oh my God, it's, you know, it's Kenny Greenberg's got a super boomy spot down, you know, front stage right, but because when we get up there to do the show, we just put our ears in, and then it becomes about the performance and how we're as musicians going to connect with the audience. And nobody, you know, wants to think about what I can and can't hear in my ears, but it's so dialed by the time we get up there, so I don't have to think about I can't hear myself sing, or the bass is too heavy, or the background vocals are getting lost, or I need Kenny up more in my mix, and unless numbers. But I mean,
does
he
that.
never does that. I know. But so by the time we get up there, like I can go out and do whatever it is I need to do and run around and, perform, because in here, everything sounds so good, and it is trust. But we're so lucky to have such a great team that,
I mean, that's part of the goal, right?
Yeah.
Is to get rid of distraction,
yeah,
right? So that you can,
You can get in the zone.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
I mean, put some context on what we're talking about, like the idea of trust, right? So I think you and I started talking about this maybe the first couple of days.
Couple of days, yeah.
The first couple, I mean, talk about some trust. I mean, I put her out of her comfort zone within about 20 minutes of talking to her,
Do that to everyone.
I was like, this guy.
But, I mean, I kind of have this, I'm kind of on this crusade with this anyway. Because, and I promise you, I'm not saying this just because she's sitting here. Bass guitar is the most important instrument to get happening at a concert. And it is also the most challenging instrument to make happen at a concert, right? But when it is right, the rest just falls into place. When you can get the bass guitar sound right and the vocal sounding right, the rest of it is just going to fall into place. So I kind of pre-gamed a little bit coming into Chesney because I knew the lineup was going to change a little bit. And even before we had heard even a bass sound yet, I came to you and I said, I'm going to challenge you a little bit on your sound here.
I'm so scared.
Because I knew we were going to have, at times we were going to have 3 distorted guitars up there. It's like I've been doing this long enough to know it's like, okay, you're not going to be able to come up with a timid, traditionally Nashville thumpy bass sound here. It's just going to get lost in the shuffle here. You've got to become a guitar player and have a sound that is going to compete with these guys. I mean, you have to, otherwise it's not going to work here.
It's her sound anyway, though.
Yeah.
It's her sound.
I meant tone it down, Daniel. No. So, but obviously there's times in the show where that's the appropriate sound. Now, once we got going and I started seeing this lady on stage perform, then another element of that kicked in is like, gosh, I've got to help her develop a bass sound that matches the visual intensity that I am seeing coming off this stage. I can't watch her up there with this incredible stage presence and have it be this real meek thing that is happening in the background. It's just not going to match. It's not going to read to the audience. It's not going to connect to the audience. So the challenge, which is kind of the basis of this panel, is how do we get a sound that's going to work for her on stage? How do we get a sound that she can believe in and still fit within the context of mix, right? And work for the audience. So, and it's a work in progress. We're going to change some things this year as well. We're going to kind of take this to the next step.
Okay.
This is a production meeting right here.
Mention that. I'm glad Ed's here for this production meeting, our production manager.
Matter of fact, I'll throw some pictures of it up here, what we're going to do here if you want to see it. But, Harmoni's traditionally in the past been on a DI, a couple of different DIs, and I pushed her into doing some distorted versions of that. And at some point, we moved over to an Ampeg pedal, which I absolutely loved. And we're going to use that as the front end to an actual amplifier this year. And I'm going to mic it up with a pair of mics. Like I'll probably use like a FET 47 and a SM59 on it so that we can take this one step further and get it where it reads, I mean, like an absolutely incredible bass sound live. She deserves it, the show deserves it, et cetera. It needs to be that way. But it takes time. You can't come in and just throw everything under the bus and say, you can't get them that far out of their comfort zone. But it's a building process. And I think it's a learning process for both of us, right?
Yeah, I love it. It's so great. Thanks. It's exciting.
Right here. No. The cash. Yes. Okay.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that a little bit because the technology that you guys use has and continues to become ever more complex, which is great and not, right? I mean, every time you add something new, does that change the whole equation when you change one thing, it changes something for Phill, it changes something for Harmony, right? I mean, the balance, maintaining that balance, isn't that part of the fun?
Well, I think some of that too is the fact from a monitor's engineer's view, we don't necessarily have a say. We have an opinion and we have our right to voice that opinion, but in the end, it's the bass player in the front of house that really have the end say. So if what they do really doesn't work with the armatures in the ear or the ability to reproduce that on stage to side fills or whatever you've got, then our job is just to become exponentially more difficult to get them comfortable, to full circle that back to a good performance. So we have to work hand in hand to go, okay, well, if you want to do that, can we just change this about it? And also our ability to know how and what to change, or at least some ways to try to get what we need and still facilitate their comfort.
I think one of the, I'd love to hear your take on this too. Over the years, certainly with guitar, probably more with guitar players than anything, the challenge, and I'll put drummers in there too, same thing. But the challenge has always been with musicians that are on stage, again, because they're up there playing in an exposed moment, et cetera. When they start to build sounds to get sounds together for the tour, they're thinking, I've got to get a good sound together. I've got to get my sound together, et cetera. But they are not necessarily thinking, how is this going to blend with the other 6 instruments on stage? That's my job to put that context on there, right? Otherwise, it becomes this very, a kind of siloed, again, this kind of bubble where, and rightly so, they're all about, I got to get my thing together. And it may not have anything to do with the context of the mix. It's like, dude, that's not going to work at all out here when I try to blend this, you know? So, you know, I have to be that arbiter of that. And it takes a delicate balance at times to say, that ain't going to work, bro, you know?
Does that happen a lot? Like, I mean, obviously, everybody sets up and in the shop and does 2 or 3 weeks of pre-production and everything. Do you run into a lot of that at that point, where everybody's bringing in sort of the stuff they've done while they've been siloed, and now I got to figure out how to put them all together again?
I think that's way more common than you would believe. I mean, I feel lucky in the Chesney camp because the guitar players, Harmony included, are just sensational about putting their sounds together. And ironically, communicating with each other when they're playing the right parts, having the right guitars affected in the right way so that they blend together. They're incredible at it. They make my job so much easier than it's been in the past, you know?
I mean, there's a lot of sound going on that stage.
Amen, sister.
Placing all of it, I mean, man, that's, you know,
It's just a little country show.
It's a little country show.
Right, right.
yeah, yeah.
It's a rock and roll show. If we're being,
It is a
We have distorted banjo, for Christ's sake.
Yeah,
I mean, come on now.
Awesome. It is actually, yeah. But I mean, I think that really is part of it, is that you guys have this, first of all, you have the benefit of good technology, you know, and obviously, I think especially for a monitor engineer, having the whole stage on in-ears, that just makes your life easier, makes your life easier as well, right?
Well, it can and it can't. And again, you know, it's this idea of talking about a system, you know.
Hmm.
I mean, I've been around dealing with ear monitors since the earliest days of them. And what became apparent really, really quickly is that if it's used in the right way, it can absolutely enhance everything you're doing. But if it's abused, it can make things go downhill really, really quickly. And I'll give you the easiest example of it was for vocalists. And I love having vocalists on ears, but sometimes having both your ears plugged and singing will change your perception of pitch, just like it does in the studio, you know, where you need one can off to kind of get back in key. But the other thing that happens many, many times with ear monitors is the singer ends up with so much diction and so much presence in their ears, they sing about this loud.
Seeing.
I mean, they can hear every little nuance of everything they're singing, and they sing about this loud, which does not work in a live sound environment because there's a signal to noise problem now, right? I've got signal this loud, and I've got this roar that's happening behind it. The microphone's dumb. It doesn't know what it's supposed to do. So, you know, there's this balance, and me and Phil talk about this actually pretty often.
Get him to turn people down. So
Got to get him to turn it down so he will project out, right, and get that signal compared to the noise.
Fine line too. If you turn them down too much, then they may get irritated that you've done something because you're saying I'm not doing my job well enough, and that's for all the bands. You've also got the issue of the proscenium. We have a 60-foot T that goes out in front and he runs on all the time. So with ears, it's quiet on stage. You can almost talk. When you cross that proscenium, Now you've got a stadium PA hitting that microphone. So you've got to make sure he sings in time and in tune, in front of the PA, behind the PA, and still comfortable with that. And that's where Scovill really helps by walking the stage and directing the PA and pointing it where it needs to be so that it's not pummeling any area and giving us a chance to do what we do. And, you know, these guys are out on the tee 4 or 5 times a show. So they're out there very little. But when you walk in front of that PA and you get full energy of the PA versus an armature that's about the size of a pencil lead trying to vibrate,
And the
it's
time
a
offset.
whole new experience. So you have to be able to mentally set yourself for that.
What's it like out there on the tee, Harmony?
Kind of like floating around in outer space, you know? I mean, it's awesome. And I mean, we're using the, I think we all are on JH Audios.
I think that's right. Yeah.
And so I have the JH Audio Roxannes, which, I mean, they're amazing for bass and vocals and all the things. And you and Opie have us all so dialed in with our mix that by the time we get out there, it is kind of washy. And there's moments where, you know, one of us or Kenny will take an ear out or we'll, so typical of him. We'll be out on the tee and somebody's soloing and he'll look at me and say something. I'm like, I don't know what's happening right now, but we're in the middle of a show. And he'll go, "Here," and so I'll take an ear out and go, "I'm sorry, what?"
I know you.
Funny, and I can't even understand it. And then I've got one ear out, and I'm trying to play, and then it's like you do get all the crazy noise from the stadium. So
Right,
I'm like, why people would want to take an ear out when you're out? It's like insane to me.
That
But
always amazes me. Yeah, because when you
Oh
take
my
one ear out and all of a sudden it's like, oh God, this is what I'm missing. Oh,
Yeah.
back
yeah,
in there.
it's a this is my safe space to have both my ears in, and the moment I get one out, I like it. It really is disturbing to me, and like I do not like it. So I try to keep those in all the time. But there's I mean, we have known guitar players that have always played with one ear out, which blows my mind.
Well, I mean, Petty did it for years. He
really?
sang with one ear
Oh
and
my-
one wedge for all the time I was there. You know.
It took some getting used to. I came from a world of clubs, wedges. Not always the best wedges, and I would
Never the best way.
pretty, stand back by the drums. Maybe I had my mic, I would sing, and there wasn't a lot of movement going on. And so when I got this gig,
That's not happening
that is
today.
not
That is not happening today.
I remember specifically our band leader was when I got this gig, almost 9 years ago. He said, we're all wireless, and you're gonna, he expects you to kind of go out and be, run around and be engaging and all that stuff. And so suddenly I was thrust into this world, and I had never, before I got this gig, I had never worn in-ears before. And so I remember going to the audition, and I put, generic in-ears in for the first time, and they kept falling out. The ones where you, the little squishy.
Oh, the squishy,
in,
yeah.
And I would put it in, and it was falling out, and I was like, well, I'm never getting this gig. And then I got the gig. And was shocking to me. And so then I had my molds made. And so now I can't imagine not wearing in-ears for this. And just you get so used to that. Like, it's a safe space. Like, this is like, you guys get the mix dialed in so perfectly and it's panned, like, stage left guitar players right over here, and Kenny's right down the middle. And, John Conley and Greenberg are panned everything is so precisely perfect. And I can hear everything. But it took a while to get used to. And I remember a couple years ago, I've changed my position on stage because I had like an Ampeg, A10 cabinet that was on a sled that Terry had made up under me because I still want to feel, feel the bass. And I would kind of stand on this platform for a lot of the show, but then I would leave. And, so at some point we got rid of the cabinet under the sled. There was also standing right by the cymbals. And so they had to put, my vocal mic had an optigate on it so that when I would go up to sing, but then even still the wash from the cymbals was so outrageously loud that
That would not be my solution.
That's not your solution.
No.
So now it's much better. You got, I can't imagine what you have to deal with out there. With
Yeah,
our
yeah. It's,
not-
I mean, you're really controlling all those bleeds and everything is a big part of that.
Oh my
deal,
God.
and it can come down to just moving something a couple of feet
Yep.
on stage can get you in a better position with it. But it all plays, it all plays into ear monitors as well, because you guys are hearing things at a much more micro level than we are out in front of house. I mean, obviously in rehearsal, we're really digging in and at the micro level and listening to things.
Right.
But on day to day, show to show, you guys are hearing way more detail than we're hearing. I rely on Opie at times,
Yeah.
where we'll be going through line check and he'll go, "You sure about that Leslie level there?" And I was like, "Oh, sure enough, he caught it." So we rely on each other up there very, very heavily.
A small difference in the ears can make a huge
Oh
difference,
my
and you
God.
notice it instantly because it is so dialed in.
Yeah. It's
You got one guitar that's just a little funky day, or it's really humid and the sound's really
hear
woofy.
it so well
Yeah,
right there.
eat
Yeah.
you up.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like I said, I think it's still a work in progress. I mean, I got things that I'm going to do with Conley and Greenberg this year that hopefully will refine it even another step. So
It's ever evolving.
it is, as long as we're going in the right direction. Yeah. Sometimes it's worth the time to take a look back and go, "Are we really better than what we used to?"
That might have been a lot.
Okay, all right, let's carry on.
No, but you raise a really good point there because, in a sense, the both of you are employing certain little elements of psychology in order to get a better performance out of them, right?
Well, in my opinion, and a monitor engineer, sorry guys, this monitor engineer's opinion is not worth a lot because it's usually a lot abstract. But I've been told a long time that no one goes home humming the lighting show. Sound is definitely an opinion, and the opinion of Scovill is 50 to 80,000 people. The opinion of me is 8 people on stage that have heard it 9 million times before, and we either had to change a pack, or change a microphone, or change something. So now that little thing we talked about is different, and there's nothing I can do about it but try to get it back to where it was. And we've got 3 to 5 songs to do that before we really hit the show, and can't change much. So having that ability to be quick is great, but also having that ability to understand and communicate really saves our butt most days.
Yeah.
Talk about the psychology of it here. I've had many discussions with other engineers and even players about this concept. I'll use guitar players as the example here. And the subject that comes up is, should guitar players do their own effects? Right? Should they do their own reverb? Should they do their own
The whole
delay?
panel in itself.
It almost, I mean, this is kind of that panel. And I always come back to it, absolutely unequivocal, that the guitar player should be in charge of handling their effects, because it affects how they play. It affects how they fret. It affects the way they dig in. Everything about the sound is affected by that. I can't compartmentalize that and go just great sound. Now I'm going to do the effects at front of house. It's a disconnection that takes place there that is not going to work.
Well, and you're there to serve them anyway. So theoretically, you should be serving whatever sound you're being given to work with, right?
Yeah. Well, but I mean, the argument sometimes is made, well, I can get a better sound quality on the guitar if I do those effects at front of house. But I mean, I can't put eighth note delays on something at front of house and have the guitar player play against it. It's just not going to work. So, you sacrifice all of that gain in sound quality with poor performance or poor groove. So I unequivocally do that. And honestly, it's part of what drove me to you to say, I was trying to get across to Harmony that, you have to play with distortion here and hear it up here and play against it, because it's going to change how you're perceiving your fretting, everything here. And I want you to get it and love it and start to realize how it's fitting with the guitars and have it energize you a little bit,
Because I remember having this conversation with you because there were a couple moments in the show. I don't use a lot of effects and pedals, but there are a couple moments where I really wanted it to kind of cut through and growl. And, we tried a lot of different pedals. And in my mind, there were a couple moments where in my ears, I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And you were like, it's lost. Like, it's just, so we really had to figure out how to get my bass to add that sort of gritty distortion growl without having it lost in the wash of guitar.
Right.
And
So the irony of it with bass guitar, and I learned this in a recording session in the late 80s. I remember walking in, I won't mention the band or anything, but I was in Holland and this band was mixing in the studio right next to me, and I happened to walk in and Jim was mixing. And I remember just listening. It was like heavy guitar and bass. I remember walking in and I go, Jim, this is the most incredible freaking bass sound I've ever heard. Please solo that up. And it was like this pristine kind of belly bass guitar that just set beautifully with the electric guitars. And I thought, oh man, I got to know how he's getting that bass sound. And he soloed it up for me, and my jaw hit the floor.
Sounded terrible, right?
It was so distorted, I could not catch my breath. And I was like, wow, how? And he was trying to explain it. And he goes, yeah, it's the only way the bass can keep up with all the harmonic structure in those distorted guitars. You got to make it another guitar. Now, I'm not talking about making you Lemmy, okay? So we're not talking about going there. I don't need you to be the Lemmy. But, you know, there's a balance of it where
Look good there.
although we do need another Lemmy. So
need another-
maybe in the off time,
I know.
we could have our own little like kind of Lemmy band. I like that. Let's do that.
You're gonna need a few more piercings, though. You know.
You
Perfect.
think so? Well, I don't know.
you know. You know, you're right, and again, this comes back to the same thing of trust. You know, you're saying that this sounds really, really great in my ears, and Rob is saying, you know, well,
Yeah.
but out there,
Not quite happening yet. Yeah.
you know, and
There is there's a compromise and a sweet spot because I obviously don't want to just go, well, it sounds great in my ears. I don't care what it sounds
Right.
like.
I mean, like most musicians.
Like most people,
Yes. Okay.
I really want it to sound good. And I remember you telling me that like the first couple of days we were working together, like the bass is going to be the most important thing and it's going to be the most challenging thing. So just stick with me. We're going to,
I think what I said was, you and I are going places.
you did. And I was
I-
like, oh my
I'm
God,
going to take you to new
Ah,
heights.
man.
this guy.
And look at us now.
Out. I know, it's true.
Wow.
You should have heard this conversation at the bar last
Yeah,
night. I'll
that's
tell you, it was
really-
rocking, man.
First time I felt speechless after. Well, but I really do like the way that you guys communicate with each other because it really does illustrate exactly what we're talking about here, which is that you really have such different positions. And when you're at front of house, there's no way that you can really know what Phil is hearing. You know, he can tell you, you know, you have no way of knowing really what's going on stage. You can talk to each other and everything, but it's
I mean, I won't hear it,
about
but I can
architecture?
tell you unequivocally, I could get on the communication system and go, hey, everything okay up there? Is something going on? Because I can tell our guy is not here right now. You know,
mm-hmm.
so, you know, how can I help you? What can we do? Is there anything I can do up front to make this better right now? Because we need the guy right now.
And I can also tell you on the flip side of that, communication is the only thing that keeps us running. There are days where there's frustration, and since I just mixed Kenny, it's specific to that for me. But if he's not communicating because he's frustrated about something else or the situation, then I can't tell him what's going on because I haven't figured it out yet, and I can't fix it because I don't know which way I need to go to fix it, or if there's a chance to fix it. Some days are just going to be Mondays, and there's nothing you can do about it. But because we put so much heart into our game and to our show, we have to try. So we try to fix it, and sometimes that just gets out the backhoe and makes a hole a little deeper.
Right,
And
you could
no
fix
one's
something
that.
and it could break a whole lot of other
Oh,
things.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Or spend so much time worrying about that problem, you miss 3 other problems on stage.
Well, on that communication front, I mean, I've learned over the years, I kind of make this a must in terms of the communication path. Like, if I have to go back and talk to Kenny about something with his vocal performance or anything like that, he comes with me, right? I would not do that and then try to relay it back to him. And it would kind of undermine his position anyway to have me go back there and talk about something. So it's like that communication circle has to take place there.
That's where the trust comes from.
It is. Well, you build that. You earn that over time. You don't just get that the first day you walk in. You know, you have to build it over time.
I'm sure we are about to get the 10-minute warning. So do we want to open it up to some Q&A? Right? Do we do Q&A? I don't know. Are we allowed to do Q&A?
As long as we don't have to answer the questions, I'm fine with.
I don't know. They might be like things we're not supposed to.
No, I'll tell you anything you want to know about Harmony.
Oh my God.
Awesome.
Thanks, sound. Pip.
I get nervous.
Oh, we now have the mic open, so I guess nobody has questions. I don't know.
Oh, here comes one. Here comes one.
Oh my God, I knew it.
Oh,
It'll be
nice.
fine,
Don't worry.
he's a plant.
I'm a person, not a plant.
That was good, Nick. Yeah.
Show us your foliage.
I was wondering, is there, when it comes to their monitor mixes, is there anybody on the team that has like peculiar or funny wants or needs or requests within their mixes? Or does everyone have pretty, like, relatively level of the whole band? Like, does everyone have some peculiar wants or needs out of what they need?
I
in
mean,
the
like
mix?
Montavani in
Yeah,
the
in their own
headphones or
monitor?
something?
There's a plethora of things that happen in ears, and one of the things we talked about earlier is that, when my mom came to the show and wanted to understand what I do and why it was an actual job, they're on ears, and she's like, "Why would anyone want to listen to this?" And I'm like, "Well, there's the drum mix, here's the bass. Oh, that's not good. There's the guitar mix," because they all have their needs for what they want to hear, and I'm fighting the PA to some degree. I'm working with the PA to some degree. I'm working with the environment that they're in. But for special needs, there's also the side of hearing loss and fit of the gear. If it doesn't fit right, it's not going to sound right. So you have to kind of determine what the need is. And if it's more guitar or brighter guitar because they've lost some high end or they just want to hear it brighter, I can do that. But that also changes how they turn the knobs on their guitar and how they set the settings on their pedals. So I've got to be as realistic as I can and also give them what they need. So I'm not just saying that whatever the band asks for, you get as a monitor engineer, but you make important and studied decisions to give them what they need within the realm of helping Scovill get what he needs.
That's actually an interesting point, though, when you talk about hearing loss and everything, because that, as you say, it not only impacts what you have to give them, but doesn't that impact what you get?
It can, for sure. Yeah, he and I have talked about this in the past, and I've certainly talked about it with the other monitor engineers, especially with regard to ears, is, pace what you're sending them. Don't start it out at 10 because their ears are going to compress and they're just going to be exhausted auditorially within, a half an hour of the show. And then you're just going to be fighting this uphill battle all night. Same thing out front. We don't start the show on 10. You try to pace people into it and make the end of the show bigger than the beginning of the show, so.
And that's always a challenge.
Yeah.
Especially at front of house. But it didn't occur to me until you mentioned it that, yeah, that's probably the same challenge you face in monitors, isn't it?
And like we said earlier, it's a micro level problem. So it may just be a tiny little adjustment on my board, but by the time I get to an armature in the ear, that's a huge adjustment to them. And then when they pull out the ear and temporal threshold sets in and the ear starts compressing, then they put the ear back in, your sound stage is now shifted. So now you don't know that as a monitor engineer, but your artist's like, it's right heavy. Why am I only hearing guitar? Well, because you took your ear out and that lady screamed in it and your ear just shut down on you. And you put your ear back in and it doesn't make the same sound because your brain goes, I had to turn that down. That was way too loud. So we're fighting those kind of issues. And one of the things that we fight on our stage a lot with our boss is keeping the ears in. You'll keep them in. I can keep the sound stage there and make it what I need to. Otherwise, I don't know what you're hearing and I can't perceive what you might or might not need. And
Clearly, we need to get another monitor engineer, somebody a little more capable.
there is no one that's less capable than me.
Well, I mean, that does make me question that, though, because I know a lot of people who take one ear out, and
If they leave it out, it's a different discussion. It's still not safe. It's better to have them both in.
of course,
But if they take one out the whole time, then your ear shifts and you can calibrate your brain to that. As an engineer, if you have an artist or a band that does that a lot, you take one out and let your ear compress to the same levels and kind of set your levels. But if you're taking it in and out, or I need isolation on this song, I don't need it on this song, that's just causing a lot of issues with your brain and the way that sound functions. That's going to change the way you sing, the way you play the timbre. You start the song show out, and like you said, you don't want to start your mix at 10, but you also don't want to go out and get your ear screamed in, so you have to play harder to hear because, well, it was fine earlier, so it must be fine now. I don't need him to turn it up.
well, is there a way for you to compensate? Because most of the time when somebody's taking their ear out, it's because they feel like they're not hearing the pitch to sing.
Or they want to hear the lady in the front row.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, or they want to hear the audience, you know? And honestly, that was always one in the early days of ear monitors where you started to notice a real disconnection.
Sure, but don't.
Right? It's like where the artist is now isolated from the audience, and you know they're standing there telling jokes, and then coming back after the show, go, nobody was laughing. It was like they were dying laughing. You just couldn't hear them, you know. So you know we've come up with ways to get audience mics into the ears.
Don't we have? I mean,
Yeah.
don't a lot of the in-ears have hear through now?
We do have the technology for that.
Mhm.
The problem is that you want, I say this slightly, you don't want to give the artist or performer more knobs than they need.
That'd be
Giving
zero.
them a knob to turn up the through, gives them another volume to turn up, and that I've got to fight with and understand how much they turned it up so I know how much my mix needs to be on top of that. And I can't regulate that. And we've got audience mics and things. That help with that. But a lot of times it's, hey, I'm your biggest fan. I need to do this or I need to do that. I need to meet you. And, oh, you got a picture from 82 when I was this. Let me see that. I got to take it out to hear what
Right.
you're saying. So now that happened. Oh, I got to sing and now I don't have time to put it back in, or I'm sweaty or sweat dripped in it. And
Yeah.
things can just go all pear-shaped quickly.
Sure. Well, we have 5 minutes left, and we have probably at least like 4 or 5 questions. So go for it.
All right, we'll shotgun this.
Cool. Harmony, Travis says hi. Just wanted to.
Oh,
Yeah. He's a great engineer. Really, really, really great guy.
oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
My question is for Brian. What advice would you give for people or for monitor engineers that are kind of in the club scene and are maybe going to go on like amphitheater arena tours? Like any advice, any pitfalls they fall into changing into bigger venues like that?
The main thing is, and Phil,
Oh, sorry.
and that's all right. The main thing for me in that situation is, number one, protect yourself. Wear hearing protection when you can. Turn down your pack when you can. If you have a wedge, turn down your wedge when you can. Because unlike an artist that may or may not end up with a giant paycheck, we're engineers and we're going to make what we make. And with that, we have to protect our hearing. So anytime you can get to a quiet spot, a green room, whatever, go there, make it quiet. Check your gear before the show. Even if you get 5 minutes with the band, take 2 of those minutes to walk around and make sure all the wedges at least sound the same. You know, have some kind of reference to them, whether they're wrung out or not wrung out. Make sure you understand the flow of the console so that you can quickly get what they need. And that's going to help you in the 3 minutes you have to get that band happy and going quicker and make the whole show better, rather than just jumping in and start turning knobs and doing things. Because you don't know what you're working with, you're going to bury yourself quick.
Sure. Thank you.
Hi, this is for Robert. So I was wondering, how beneficial is it to know like the different systems in your PA when you go to a venue? Like whether it's D&B, acoustic, did you like study that prior so that you know what kind of sound you're getting, or is that like, yeah, how do you usually go about things?
Yeah, unquestionably. I mean, you have to know the capabilities of all the systems that are out there, you know. And luckily today, the variance between all the major PA systems is not anywhere even remotely as great as it used to be when we were in horizontally arrayed PAs, you know. So the differences are kind of nuanced to some degree, but you have to understand the capabilities of the PA system, especially like even when I go evaluate a new PA system, I spend so much time evaluating what is coming off of the back of the PA system as opposed to what's coming out of the front of the PA system, because I know the impact that's going to have on a big stage, right? So I've got to have control of that audio behind the PA as much as I've got it in front of the PA.
Hi, Frank Nolan. From someone who's done sound in small clubs to, you know, be outdoor arenas, one thing I've found sometimes is with stage volume, sometimes it's not so much about volume from different amps or whatever, but it's about frequency. Do you guys address that much with the artist, like with the guitar player? Would you say, you know, it's a little harsh on the mids or on the high end, rather than turning volume down, adjust frequency to get them to fit into your mix?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm kind of a Nazi about mic placement. It's like I drive people crazy with minute mic placement changes because they make such an impact on guitar. And we're going to have that with Harmony this year because we're going to move to microphones on her. I imagine we're going to spend that first couple of days really, really dialing in mic placement on that combo amp. And
That just snaps to the quarter of an inch and makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's all down to detail, right? How detailed do you want to be? I'm super detailed about it, everything.
So, do you guys ever get in situations where it's a one-off, it's a condensed version of the group, that kind of thing, and it's not all the gear you're used to getting all the time, and it gets thrown to a degree, it gets thrown in front of you. They're like, "This is what we're going to use." What do you do to quickly build out the necessary uh, bass baseline mix, especially in monitors with ears, because I'm a monitor engineer. But for all of you, how do you approach that, and what's the quick answer?
From a monitor viewpoint, we've done this with Kenny. I used to do a Cave in the Closet tour, which was a bar tour. And on the road, we do some of those where we play a stadium and then we jump right over to a bar that night and use whatever the band had, including their drums and bass and guitar and everything. And the main thing is to make sure whatever venue they pick, if you can, that there's a tech or an engineer in the building that knows the gear, knows what works, what doesn't work, and then take 2 seconds, talk to them. Hey, okay, what are your best wedges? What are your not so good wedges? What mics are good vocalist mics? Set those up so when your artist steps in front of him, you got a chance, and then make sure he's there the whole time and sober to help you move the knobs
It's on
if
every
necessary,
rider.
or do whatever. I mean, we've been in venues where there's a balcony and the guy from the top floor drops a beer on the console, and it's like, well,
Never
let's hope that stays working, and here we go. And sometimes you just got to go to the artist and go, it's not going to be a good night. It's going to really stink. And I'm there for you, and I'll do whatever I can. And if you want to rent gear, order gear, whatever, we'll try. But right now, we're going to step out on the stage, we're going to sing, we're going to do awesome things. So make this that rock and roll moment of just grunge and have fun with it. And a lot of times they will. You've got to talk to your artist. You got to be honest, but you also have to be their friend and go, this is your friend talking here. It's not going to be great tonight. Or, man, that crowd off the chain, they're screaming, knowing that the wedges aren't going to sound the best in the world, or the PA isn't going to sound the best in the world because you're trying to change their focus to that crowd's going to scream so loud you wouldn't have heard it anyway.
Yeah.
With the energy. Okay.
I believe we are now officially out of time. Sorry.
Tell you what, you ask the question and then we'll come down there and answer.
Exactly. We'll talk about it afterward.
Okay. My question was just I've been doing live sound for only like about 2 years now, but I've been wanting to like start touring. So do you have any advice on how to get into that, or like where to start?
Run. As far as you can.